The film begins with the collapse of the cosmic shuttle around which a real hype erupted. Shatla's fragments were completely cordoned off. In the evening, an expert from the Central Design Bureau, T.'s Tucker Kaufman, comes to the scene. The military informs him that the fragments have become a source of infection, and the zone of infection with an unknown alien virus can be about 300 kilometers. This virus is extremely tenacious and is able to survive both in the heat and in the cold. When Kaufman leaves the headquarters, a girl runs up to him and stretches a piece of sheathing with the words, "Sir, it fell on our roof." He mechanically takes it in his hand, but then throws it away, cutting his finger. Upon returning home, he is met by a dog who, growing, runs away. Kaufman goes to bed and is covered with some kind of film during sleep. Meanwhile, we get acquainted with the main characters. Carol works as a psychologist. At work, her ex-husband calls her, the same Kaufman who looks quite normal after the night. He says that he wants to see their son Oliver, but she refuses him. Carol escorts Oliver to school and gets into the car to Ben, a familiar scientist who clearly likes it. He tells her news and expresses confidence that the authorities are hiding something. At work, Carol is waiting for an old client who complains of her husband, who has changed a lot. She claims that this is no longer her husband. He forces her to drink something and killed their dog, who's simply barking at him. Carol prescribes her medicines and asks to call if the situation is repeated. In the evening, Carol and his friend take children and go to beg for sweets for Halloween. A dog attacks one of the boys of her friend, but the boy does not react and almost kills the animal. Carol notes the oddities in the behavior of the child, but the mother is sure that it's okay. Oliver screams and asks to remove some nasty thing from him. Carol removes this strange piece of skin and shows it to Ben. They study the sample and understand that similar finds were discovered in other countries. At this time, at a meeting which discusses the issue of holding back the spread of a new virus, there are officials of the presidential administration and various experts, including Kaufman. The waiters bring them coffee and they spew out some kind of liquid. Kaufman claims that the best way to combat the virus is vaccination, but the chairman of the meeting says that they do not have time to go into scientific details. Carol notices how on the street one man becomes bad. In the lobby, she is waiting for the husband of the very client who behaves strangely and declares that she will wait for his wife, although she does not have an appointed meeting. Carol calls the client and finds out that she is already on the way. The client is nervous and says that you need to talk. When Carol tells her that her husband was sitting in the reception room, the client abruptly changes his mind to go. Carol takes his son to his father, but a woman runs out on the road and asks for help, shouting that they are among us and you need to warn people. At that moment, a car knocks it on, which a strange man is sitting at the wheel, the same as the police officer who arrived. The father takes Oliver to him, and Carol goes to dinner with Ben and tells him about what happened. Oliver plays with a neighbor boy and says that something is wrong with his dad. The second boy answers the same. Father offers Oliver hot chocolate to become infected. At dinner, Carol meets an eccentric Russian diplomat, Yuri. They have an interesting dialogue that, despite the achievements of civilization, a person deep down remains a primitive creature and is capable of terrible actions in certain circumstances. After dinner, Carol and Ben go home. At her house, Ben is kissed by Carol, but she asks to remain friends. A strange man comes to Carol at home who seems to be an employee of the population census and wants to ask her a few questions. She begins to suspect that something is wrong because the street is already night. He begins to break the door with a crazy look, but nothing comes out for him, and he calmly leaves. She calls Ben, and he comes to spend the night with her. In the morning, Ben tries to like and capture pancakes. On the street, she meets more and more infected. She understands that people go crazy because of the virus. The secretary brings her tea to infect, but does not have time. Ben calls her and talks about what his friend discovered in the laboratory. The virus cells wake up after sleep. Even if a person is infected, he becomes zombies only after sleep. Colleagues from the laboratory of Fort Detrick put forward a hypothesis that this is a reasonable unit, consisting of just several cells that integrate their DNA into human bodies and reprogram human genome in one night. At this time, Lyudmila calls from the Czech embassy and says that something terrible is happening to Yuri. They go to her and see Yuri sleeping and covered with mucus. They decide to take samples and remove everything on camera. Carol takes pictures of Yuri with an outbreak, and he sharply attacks her and dies in convulsions, since the process of its transformation into zombies was not completed. Carol, in a panic, goes to his ex-husband for his son and realizes that he has become one of the infected. The husband and his zombie friends tell her that she will not notice changes when she wakes up and infect her. The son is not at home, and she leaves, realizing that now she should not sleep. There are already too many zombies on the street. She tries to run by throwing a car, but the city is already filled with infected. The son sends her a message message asking him to pick him up. The same people sit in the subway who learned not to show emotions, but this does not save them. Only Carol runs away, who kills one of them. On the street, there is an adhesive of the unpretentious. She tries not to show emotions. Not finding her son at home, she comes to Ben and his friend. Having discussed the situation, they decide to go to Fort Detrick, located 200 kilometers from Washington, where they promised to help them. But Carol does not want to go without a son, and she and Ben go look for him. On the street, they meet the very client who sees the police. She screams that she was already sleeping but does not look infected. Having become interested, they go to Carol's office, and from the history of Wendy find out that she was ill with acute multiple encephalitis, ORM, a complication after chickenpox. Carol recalls that last year her son was also ill with chickenpox. Despite the vaccine, this was a new variety, and in the hospital he was made the same diagnosis, ORM. They report their discovery in Fort Detrick, where they prepare and test the vaccine from the virus. At this time, she comes a message from Oliver, who is in Baltimore at the mother of Tucker. Ben helps her break through the military cordon and remains in Washington, and she goes to Baltimore by train. On the train, she meets Oliver's friend, who is also infected. He reports that his mother died, not having time to transform, and invites her to sleep. She agrees and pretends to turn, putting on the films found in the toilet. At the station, she is met by her ex-husband Tucker, and they go to his mother. Carol enters the son's room. They look at each other for a long time, trying to understand if there are infected among them. After making sure that everything is in order, they hug, but at that moment, a guy from the train enters the room and sees that they both have not changed. Carol pushes him, and he loses consciousness. They run away from the house and hide in a basement, but Tucker finds them, and in a brawl, she kills him with a hammer blow. Then they run to the pharmacy. Carol finds adrenaline and explains to his son how to use it. In the back room, they find sleeping infected. Take a pistol from a sleeping policeman and lock them. While they are waiting for Ben, Carol falls asleep and begins to turn. However, Oliver makes her an injection of adrenaline in her heart, thereby awakening her and stopping the transformation. Ben comes, and she understands with horror that he has changed. He unlocks the back room and releases zombies. In an attempt to grab her, Carol kills everyone and Bena wounds in the leg. The following is a chase scene in which the zombies are trying to grab Carol and her son. They are saved with the help of Dr. Gallion, who flew on a helicopter. The news reports the vaccination of the population through water and food, spraying the vaccine from helicopters. Dr. Gallion gives an interview in which he claims that the virus is defeated. The recovered people do not remember anything and perceive what happened as a dream. I also advise you to watch other videos on my channel. Good luck!